Human sacrifice, a very common ritual performed many centuries ago, revolves around the religious world. It is a heavy religious ritual and was never taken lightly. Human sacrifices were never random events, but in fact were demonstrated for one purpose: fertility. The Aztecs of central Mexico were the most notorious for human sacrifice. However, the Celtic Druid human sacrifice was just as brutal. The Aztecs believed that the gods fed them crops and life. They knew that blood was the price to pay for such commodities. God fed man, so man must feed God. This is very similar to the Celtic Druid sacrifice. Both civilizations practiced human sacrifice for the same purpose: fertility. The main differences were how they were performed. The Aztecs would hold 18 sacrifices of bloodshed a year. In 1 year, as many as 20,000 people would be sacrificed in front of this mass populace. The Aztecs would take captured enemies and offer them to the gods on the Aztec pyramids. They would remove the heart with an obsidian knife in a single blow and show it to the sacrifice on the altar. This blood was the payment to the gods for the rain to come and water their crops. Celtic tradition is a little different. Celtic Druids had two forms of sacrifice: the Wicker Man and the Triple Death. The Wicker Man is similar in two ways to the Aztec performance. Both of these sacrifices would take place in front of a very large crowd, and a number of people would be sacrificed. The Wicker Man was built of wood in the shape of a man. The inside would be large enough to fit many people inside. 20 to 30 men, women, and children would be forced into the Wicker Man and then set ablaze. The screams of these individuals would please the gods and still have an effect on the crowd watching. The smell of the burning flesh would bring rain to the Celtic and provide water for their crops. The men and women sacrificed were condemned men. These men and women committed some sort of crime against society. The Triple Death was a more private affair. A man would be taken into the forest of Nethris by a priest. There he would be confronted by a priestess that acted as the sexual goddess herself. He was then given a drink with similar effects of LSD, the hallucinogen. He would be seated in an upright posture. This is very important. You can see this in Celtic art. He would then assume the role of the god of fertility, and she would arouse the man. And at the moment of seduction, he would be strangled, beaten, and stabbed. Thus the Triple Death. This was performed obviously by the priest and the priestess. His body would be then thrown into a bog and left for archaeologists to find many centuries later. This is normal. The Aztecs you can find where the sacrifice has assumed the role of a deity. During the Aztec sacrifice, a man was always chosen amongst the captive, usually the strongest, the one with the most upright proper posture, the proudest, and he was then taken away from the sacrifice and treated as a god for a year. He assumed the role of the Aztec sun god and would be treated as such. He would be given a woman to please his sexual desires, many women in fact. When his year was up, he was painted blue and black like the god, and he walked up the pyramid steps alone. He then had his heart removed before all. His head and limbs were then removed and feasted upon by the Aztec priests. The priests knew that by eating this man, they were eating their god. They were gaining some sort of knowledge, some sort of wisdom from eating this. You know, human sacrifice no longer has a place in our modern society. Over the centuries, man has evolved from such a primitive state. However, rest assured that somewhere on this large planet, someone or something is still feeding the gods.